generator this morning, what number they go. Lisa Catto is our first contestant. If you want to do that, she is known as the Automation Queen. Her company is called the Business Catalyst, and she is known as the Queen of Automation. And you are in for a treat because I've seen her presentation and I know you're going to get value. So without further ado, please, big round of applause for Lisa Catto.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Sophie mentioned, my name is Lisa Catto, and I'm the founder of the Business Catalyst and also known as the Queen of Automation, mainly down to my attention spanning, trying to get stuff done. So what we do is we work with business owners in order to help them save time, get organized, grow sales, and indeed to scale. The kind of business owners that we work with are those in bricks and mortar businesses, info and e-learning, coaches, consultants, and e-commerce. What we discovered is that these clients had a problem. They knew they were leaving money on the table. They knew that they had gaps in their customer journey, and they were just letting opportunities slip through the cracks. So we came up with a solution. The solution was the mapping of the ideal customer journey, where we walk through somebody's business, we help them identify the gaps, spot the opportunities, show them where they should bring attention and an action plan, which we develop with them, into their business so that they start to get ROI on their time and, of course, their money. We do in minutes what takes you hours. The kind of results that we're getting for our clients is saving thousands of man hours every year for people actually in this room right now. We double revenues, we increase profits. We hear things such as it's poetry in motion. I never knew that this automation could have this kind of impact on my business. This is music to my ears. So I've lost where I was now. That's because I've got two clickers. So we will scan back a little bit. I'll give a little bit of history on me. I became a business owner over 30 years ago when I was 19 years old. My first business was London's only roller rink, which I converted into a rave venue for 3,000 people on Friday and Saturday nights. That was an adventure in itself. I moved from there into running an animation art gallery where we were the European distributors for Hanna-Barbera, Warner Brothers. We were selling Disney art and the global distributors for Pink Floyd, The Wall. It was very much in vogue in the early 90s. My main part of my career was actually in digital marketing, which I started in the mid-90s, in the days of dial-up modems and floppy disks, I think that we were discussing earlier. We were doing product placement in computer games. We put the Adidas ball into FIFA. We did all the branding in Sony Gran Turismo. And then the brands, the FMCG and blue chips brands we were working with said, we don't want to be in somebody else's game, and it's all great, and we'll carry on doing that, but we'd actually quite like our own games. So we set up a development company where we were then making in-pack and on-pack promotions, millions of CDs on cereal boxes, on supermarkets all over the world. And that led on to making Xbox and PlayStation games for the large publishers in the States. So that was the main core of my business. We did so well, in fact, at that business, that by my mid-30s, I was able to retire to the south of France, which worked really well because my kids were little. So they grew up in this rural paradise, 11th century, very cobblestoned village with a natural source there. And this is where they did their primary education. They're bilingual. Couldn't be more grateful for that for my kids. But I'm in my mid-30s and I wasn't quite ready to be retired or put out to pasture at this point. And unfortunately, the marriage didn't survive. And about 10 years ago, I ended up coming back to the UK, which is when we started the Business Catalyst. It's also the time that I discovered Keep, which, as Dan mentioned, was formerly known as Infusionsoft. I found something that was amazing for me because it was a brilliant mixture of geek and marketing, being able to build these automated customer journeys for people using Keep as the software. So much so I got really into it and really enjoyed it and built my business off the back of it. I started winning awards at it. There's about 500 plus Keep partners worldwide. So I've been distinguished amongst them, as well as being told by the owner of Keep, the founder, Clayton Mask, that I'm considered an expert in my field. What I'm here to talk to you about today, however, is the growth that we've experienced in the Business Catalyst. This is just, I haven't got a screen behind me. This is just the last couple of years. You'll see I've started at 2019. I did get a little bit distracted when I first came back from France. I had another business that I think Dan affectionately refers to as a money pit. I think that's one of your more polite terms. Wasn't that nice? No, it was actually when I first joined the mastermind over 4 years ago. I was in for that business, and it took me a little while to see reason, but I managed to offload that business about the time where you can see the upswing in these numbers here. So in this business, what did we do? So I want to talk to you about the growth. Right clicker, this clicker here. During COVID, no, in fact, before I do that, what I knew about growing this business was it wasn't going to be able to grow unless I did. Every single person in this room has stuff going on in their lives. Could be divorce, could be death, could be a new baby, could be a new marriage, could be a pandemic, could be teenage kids. And we all have situations which we give story to. And we give that story meaning. And then we live in that meaning like it's the absolute truth. When absolutely, it's just a story that we're telling ourselves. And this is what was going on for me, especially when I was making so many poor decisions, just moved countries, getting divorced, having to move my kids' countries. It was all quite dramatic at the time. My mother also suffered a stroke at the beginning of COVID and ended up living with me. And I love my mum, but living with my mother as a middle-aged woman when she's ill, as COVID lockdown starts, was pretty hard. Yes, JL, exactly, that face. I was also processing a lot around the suicide of my father. I was having to deal with my daughter's A-levels at the time as well in lockdown. I had crippling anxiety. My inner dialogue was absolutely appalling. I don't think there was anybody who was more mean to me in the whole of my life other than me. And I needed to start taking some action into rebuilding my life, rebuilding my wealth. I just lost £600,000 in a business divorce that went very bad. And as a result, I had to sell my house. And I just couldn't get out of bed some mornings. It was really crippling. But I needed to start thinking about how I was going to rebuild my life, how I was going to be a role model for my kids, and what I was going to do in order to get back on track. So I had to do the work. I had to read the books, not just read the books, but actually do the action off the back of what I was learning in the books. A lot of journaling, a lot of meditating, a lot of forgiveness around me, a lot of forgiveness around my parents, a lot of looking at the lessons that I had learned in the experiences that I'd had. Instead of living in the victim of those stories, it's like, how can I turn this around and learn the lessons from it so that I can turn it into a positive and use those lessons to move forward more positively. Another big thing I had to do, put in boundaries. One of my massive problems was allowing my boundaries to be breached, complaining that it was other people's faults, but actually I was the one allowing that to happen. This is all still very much work in progress. I'm not even close, I think, to getting to where I could be with all of this. A lot of that's come about from creating really good habits, eating properly and regularly, not getting to 5 p.m. and going, oh yeah, I should have a snack bar, or living off coffee and caffeine fumes. Eating healthily, going to the gym every day. Thank you to Becky, who has given me a 20-minute gym plan, which means I can do that every day. So I'm now consistently somebody that goes to the gym every day and then spams Becky every morning with what I have done in the gym. So these formations of these positive habits have been a massive factor in my growth, which has had a knock-on effect in the growth of the company. So during the year of COVID, we had a massive upswing. We had a 477% increase in our turnover and over 800, nearly 900% increase in our profit. What did we do? We did messaging. We got very clear on that we were the developers and implementers of the ideal customer journey. We got really visible with that. I was on webinars, I was on podcasts, I was doing YouTube explainers. I was doing everything I could with lead magnets and white papers to make sure that the messaging around what we were doing was out there. I was building relationships and joint ventures, finding people like Georgia who had the same audience as me, but was not in direct competition with me. We automated, funnily enough, our sales process and our marketing. And we had our follow-up ready and everything branded and pulled together so that we really were on top of who we needed to speak to, when we needed to speak to them, and what we needed to speak to them about. We got very clear on our next strategy, which was an MRR strategy. We looked at how much cash we needed in the business in order to give ourselves breathing space. That was an MRR strategy that we put in straight away. And that really was the game changer for us. The cash strategy gave us the focus that we needed so that we had the breathing space. So that would take us up to the 2021, where we experienced a 17 times growth in our equity in the business just by the end of 2021. At the time, I knew that if I didn't sort myself out, I also sold my property in 2021 to release that equity. There was a lot of mindset work that went on around that as well. And thank you for Kevin for basically bullying me into that decision. And if you told me a year previously that I would have more than 6 figures in the bank with everything paid, I would have thought you were absolutely insane. Growth was one thing, but scale is quite another. The business was completely hinged on me, completely reliant on me. If I'd walked away, the whole thing would have just fallen apart. So going from growth to scale in the last year, which is what we've done, has increased again our equity by an additional 4.5. But we grew too quickly and something was going to break. And that was probably going to be me. Everything was on my shoulders, all of the marketing, all of the sales, all of the delivery. Thank goodness for Stephen, who was running everything in the background for me at the time as well. So we needed a plan, how we were going to get me out of the business. That plan started with productization. So we've got the ideal customer journey, a very bespoke product. Customers come in, we go through their business with them, we identify the gaps, we build the action plan, and we build the systems and the automations that they need in order to grow their business. And we have fortnightly, and if there's any Americans in the room, that's bi-monthly, calls with them to take them through and make sure that we stay on track with that plan. How are we going to make this bespoke product productized? Well, at the time, we were lucky enough that we've been working with one of the largest orthodontic practices in the UK. Now, orthodontists are not subject to lockdown, they're medical. Orthodontists have a ticket price of at least £2,500 to £3,000. And one of my clients, East Mids orthodontists at the back of the room there, will say, will qualify this, that no patient gets out of there without paying a 4-figure sum. So for us as a premium product, this really works. So we developed the ideal patient journey. This is something that works for every dentist, orthodontic, bricks and mortar, appointment-based business, any business that has a patient that they're seeing. We diagnosed the problem for them. We had templated campaigns and automations ready to go that I had designed, but were not reliant on me rolling out. The strategy was essentially the same, which meant that could be taught to people. The calls that we were having with the orthodontist could be templated because it was the same call every time. It was a repeatable, scalable process. So this is how we started with getting me out of the business. But we needed people to be able to deliver that. So we needed to hire. Oh, also, instead of having bi-monthly calls, 26 calls a year, we brought that down into 16 weeks worth of calls over 2 weeks. So 26 calls became 8 calls in the whole of the product life cycle. As well as, so that's the map actually of the ideal patient journey that we build out, which has all been completely, all the reporting, everything has been templatized. So before we could hire anyone, we needed to get really clear on who we were. How can we hire someone into a business and make sure they're a good fit if we don't know what we're fitting them into? So we did a lot of work on our culture and our core values to make sure that we were hiring the right people. I haven't got a great attention span, and having to go through the hiring process more than once really didn't appeal to me very much. During the hiring process, we wrote up talent maps. We knew what position we were hiring for. We knew what activities they were going to fulfill. We knew what outcomes we wanted from that role. We knew what competencies they needed to have, what personalities, and what skills they needed to have, so that we were really very clear, not just for ourselves, but for anybody that we were hiring into the role. They knew exactly what was expected of them as well. Now we're ready to hire, and we started building the team. Team had been a little bit light until then. my long-suffering business partner sitting at the back of the room, me and he taking on the world. So the first thing we had to look at was like, where are we going to replace Lisa first in the business? And that had to be in some of the client-facing stuff and the actual building of the automation. So a couple of coaches came in, Rick and Cam, and we hired Ryan, who was our first automation coach. As it turns out, I am not the best people manager in the world. Who would have thought it? So then we hired Catherine, Stephen's sister. Stephen said to me, she's more organized than me. And I'm like, hire her now. So she's basically more organized than all of us put together. She's been instrumental in making sure that all of our resources are met, that the flow that the customer is experiencing with their tasking and the engineers being on track and on time. And basically harnessing, I think Stephen refers to it as chaos that I cause. Catherine has been instrumental in sorting all of that out. And we also hired our second automation engineer. That all happened in around Q4 last year. And then in Q1 this year, at the beginning of Q2, we hired Fred. Fred is the closest thing to me in respect to the technology of being able to build the customer journeys and design them and do all of the reporting necessary. In fact, in his interview, I'm not allowed to make any key decisions in the business without Stephen's sign-off. The most wisest decision I ever made in my business. And when Stephen met him, I've been raving about him for ages. And when Stephen met him, he went, hold your horses till I meet him. We'll have the final sale. And then he went, oh, he talks like you do, but he makes sense. So Fred was a big hit and has been a big hit in the last couple of months with the whole team. And more to the point, he's able to support the engineers on a technical level. So whilst Catherine is making sure that everyone's doing when they're meant to be doing it, Fred is able to do the people management side of things on the technical level and get me out of the picture so that I can work on more of the marketing, the sales strategy, building the relationships that we need in order to grow the business. The next thing we needed was to make sure that everybody was doing the same thing the same way every single time. So building out our own systems and processes. So not just that the ideal patient journey was templatized, but every single thing that we did was repeatable and didn't involve a third party in showing you how to do it, where to do it, or what you needed to do to get it done. So we've been building our own systems and processes for our own business, whilst also obviously building those for our clients as well. So the steps that took us from growth to scale one by one was my mindset, taking me from somebody that was anxious and overwhelmed, depressed, couldn't really get out of bed, to somebody who was much more happy, fulfilled and content. It all hinged on me and started with me. Our own productization, taking a single product that was completely reliant on me to a productized, automated offering. An MRR and cash strategy, taking us from a retainer that was a minimum of 6 months with bi-monthly calls to a 12-month contract with only 8 calls in order to be able to deliver it, making sure that our cash is always there. Niching, going from serving everyone to serving orthodontists, getting really clear on that. Getting clear on who we were by redefining our core values. Hiring A players. In the last 12 months, we've taken the team from Stephen and myself 2 to now a team of 12. And our own systems and processes, fully documenting our own SOPs, our marketing, our sales, our own workflow automation. Our equity, as I said, in the last 10 months or 10 quarters, in 2021, we experienced 5 times growth in our equity. 2021 to 22, a further 7 times. In the last 12 months, almost 5 times. And also our cash, because nothing happens without cash in the bank, right? Doesn't matter how much money you're making if it's not there. We have done a 12 times multiple of our cash growth as well in the last couple of years. So what I'm really hoping is that you guys can take one thing, one tactic that we've done, one strategy that we've implemented and be inspired, whether it's for yourself, rebuilding relationships with yourself and your life and your team and your family, or in your business, to take action so that you can experience something like the growth that we have in the last couple of years. Thank you very much.
Very impressive. Very, very impressive. All right. All right. So while we are queuing up the next group, which is going to be a tag team presentation, by the way, let's go ahead and hit some scores. So if you open up your rubric, you can see that we have different categories.